Oh, wait a minute.
There we go. We can go.
Delete that. Okay. Yeah, but when that comes up, it hides everybody. Okay. So today is the 4th day of the free classes, and I hope you've got enough in a way to understand just how much there is to learn about the oneness. And I hope that you go back to the recordings and listen to them again and seriously think about whether you want to study with me. Now, we haven't actually got the school up, but we're fiddling around raising the money. We've got someone in India that will do us a proper website, not just us fiddling around, which will make a big difference. So I'm amassing money and trying to do all this. And so we haven't picked a date to do the proper psychic development class, beginner's class. Right? And so, bear with me, but please don't be disheartened if it doesn't happen for a month, because I will do it. Even if we don't have the site up, I'll contact you all and we'll arrange to start it, okay? But we've had so many personal things come up and down with our lives. And Katie's not been well, and she'll share with you what she has to go through in the future if she wants. Not my business to share. But, we're a team, and so we want to give her time to get through what she's got to go through as well. Okay, so that said, today is about the dark side. We did it before, but this time I want to bring it down into your psyche so that you know what to look for and how to handle anything that's negative going on around you. So I'm going to start with our everyday stuff, and I'm going to go deeper and deeper into the dark side. But before I do that, is there any questions left over from the 3 weeks before that you've wondered about? Because this is a time to ask me. Okay, anybody? Well, that's nice. Must be a very good teacher. No, joking. But anyway, okay, so right now you've probably noticed that the planets are in a position that they're affecting us, even if you don't know astrology, where you hear about the moon and you hear about Venus and Mercury, and they're, people who send out astrology free readings all the time. Oh, this is a period of time where you need to pull in and think about yourself and what you're doing, rather than reaching out to everyone else. You've also probably noticed it's loads of con merchants online, and people bothering you on your phone all the time. This is all to do with the positions of the planets in our universe. And while we're not going into that, I want you to really be aware of the fact that when they're in a position that is either right side by side like this, and we've got two conflicts. For example, if we've got Saturn and Pluto nearby, Saturn is lessons and Pluto is energy, it's a force. So if you've got someone attuning to those planets, then they could come on as a light force or a dark force, depending on the rest of their chart. So I'm not going to the light force today, I'm staying in the dark. So I want you to understand, be very leery about anyone who comes into your life and says, I've got the key to your future. I need X, Y, Z from you to get started. You don't have to pay me much now, but in time you will. And, suddenly, you find out that they've run off with your money. And believe it or not, Lynn knows about this. I had a second approach on Publishers Clearinghouse to get me, and I got conned the first time, and I won't go into it all. It's too long a story, but in a nutshell, I was so not trusting all the way through. And the way they got me to part with some money was very, very clever. And here they targeted me again. And I'm telling them over and over again, I know your game, I know you're a fraud, blah, blah, blah. Publishers Clearinghouse does not send warnings that you've won, and so on and so forth. And so what ended up happening was he didn't give up. And I was about to hang up on him when someone else called me. And that was when he did finally hang up and gave up and didn't call me back. So these are the things that are going on around now. There's people calling up and saying that they're going to rebuild your website, or they're going to sort out your taxes for you or something. Whatever you hear, do not give any information out. Hear that very strongly. It doesn't matter which country you're in, they're all over the world in different languages, conning people. And so even if it sounds like the precious thing you've been waiting for forever and ever, okay, says to someone, I'll talk to you in 2 months about it. By then it will have moved, that energy from Saturn and Pluto will have moved away from one another. So we won't have so many people trying to pitch us that we need them, which is Saturn lessons and learning, and Pluto power. I've got all the products in my hand that I can make your life wonderful. Whatever their pitch is, walk away, don't say anything for the next 2 months till these planets start to drift apart. Everybody clear on that? Okay, so in the lowest form of negativity from these people who are negative like that, who are conning people, you have to realize that they also have a lot of pressure on their necks from whoever is behind them saying, you've got to get on that phone, you have got to get someone hooked in, you have got to make money, or you're out, or we expose you to the police or something, you know. So even those people in those situations, they are not safe. And so they are frightened. And I want you to understand that fear is the downfall of all of us, in the sense of, if we don't know anything, we can correlate all our ancestry, all our stuff I've talked about into this one moment when we go panic. What do I do? So this is definitely not a time to panic. So if you do have pressures and things, worrying about loved ones or whatever they're doing, withdraw, meditate, get into your own things that you can do on your own at home, so that you are not influenced by outside forces at this time. At the same time, you're going to be aspiring to your spirit guides to ask them to support you. Now, this is where the negative and the dark side can come in. So who is the negative, the dark side? On the weakest level with not much power is the people who have passed over, i.e. we've had lots of people die from COVID. And we have to be honest with ourselves and say, of all those people, they're not all innocent angels. A lot of those people were con merchants. A lot of those people were trying to make $1 million and trying to get people under in an MLM building situation. You can go anywhere in your mind and you can realize that these kinds of people who were desperate emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually in their environment, whatever country it was, relative to whether it's a revolution going on or floods and all the crops are gone, to like here with remembrances of 9/11, people saying, emotionally how it's pressing their buttons again, are vulnerable to someone who's passed over in the way of the dreaded lurgy, or they've had bad kidneys, bad liver, bad lungs, they got cancer, whatever. You can understand that in the health scenario of anyone living, if you've come down with those kinds of illnesses, you have been negative throughout your life. Because when you're positive, you heal. Okay, so we've lost a lot of people to this virus, and we've lost a lot of people to normal illnesses. I was listening to the news today. Someone is very, very ill, not because of that, but because of a tsetse fly. Okay, so it's not just your everyday things. It's a strange and unusual. Whoever heard of a tsetse fly in America? It must have come in on a fruit barrel, right? Somehow and hatched out. We don't know. We never know what's likely to come to us. So this period, the next 2 weeks particularly, is a very good time to not have too many meetings, not going out and about, but rather pooling your resources at home and going back over your life. Because when it's negative, that's what's going to come up. And that's the influence of the planets right now. So sit down with a journal and write those memories down as you remember them, date it, and then put it aside. Don't mull over it. Don't go and he said and she said and this happened and that happened. You know, just put the main energies of what upset you down and why you responded in whatever way you did and how long ago it was, and then date it for today or whenever you do it. Now, you're going to put that aside. That will be part of your workbook in the future in your own way. And then you will read it, say in 6 months' time, when the energies have changed, and you'll find you look at those writings differently. So this is a way to do your homework to physically protect yourself from the past. However, if you are not over it and it's still sore, wound in your heart and soul, this energy from the planets with Mercury and Venus coming in as well, and with Jupiter, is likely to bring old history back into your life. That could be people you have met years ago, and they're suddenly like, oh, I thought about you and I want to call you. Fine. But if they're full of negativity, make excuses, get off the phone, because guarantee in their own way, they're reaching out because they remember you as kind, but they're really after something, which is another form of conning. Do you understand that, all of you? Okay. And you don't want old history, someone coming back in and stabbing you in the heart again. Nor do you, on the other side, feel obligated to want to have to rescue them and stab yourself in the heart by being a sacrificial lamb. That is negativity in physical body, in your emotion and mental aspects when they're not in harmony. Your brain's saying, go here, your heart's going, I don't know, and you're all over the place. You're going to lose yourself, and that's negative. Now, here's the warning. Coming back to what I was talking about, all the people that died. If you're empathetic and sympathetic about someone's loved one, and you're going through your negative things, people are coming back from the past, or you're remembering your loved ones that passed on, don't go into the negativity or go into the negativity of other people who are mourning and bereaving. You must stay in the light and talk to them as though you're an archangel, okay, for now. But if you have to do that, then that's what you can do. But don't go into, I know what you mean, it hurts me too, my hubby died last year, that kind of thing. Don't go there. Just stay, okay, I'm here to help, I'm counselor, I'm giving you what's up here. This is what you can do practically. You can put some roses on the grave or in your yard and just say a quiet meditation, and your oneness hubby will be fine. That kind of thing, short, sweet, and precise. Now, if you do have someone come into your environment who is still mourning and worried about money and the whole caboodle that you can imagine, and you feel morally and obligated to help them, I'm going to tell you a very simple thing. Before you know they're coming, get a pot of salt, bless it, and put it across your door front. What does salt do? Now, if you think about real mining of salt, anyone who's mining it cannot stay in there for more than an hour because they become deranged. And so in the same way, if you've got someone who's got weighed down with every possible negative scenario you could think of coming into your house, you can pretty well guarantee that they've also got company. And by company, I mean all the sorrow, miserable people who've passed on, who know they're dead and don't want to go to heaven because for some thought in their mind, they're still hanging on. I'll talk about that why and how in a minute. But I want you to understand that when you open that door to your friend who's negative and her aura, it has made ribbons with earthbound spirits who have died and not passed on for various reasons, then you're inviting them into your house. Put the salt, it oscillates, it vibrates in such a strong vibration that any earthbound spirits in the company of that woman will step back. They won't come into your house. And when she steps over that, she will also feel like, oh, it's nicer in your house, because for that brief time it's taking her, and I'm saying her, it could be him, out of the negative moment by getting those negative entities away from her aura. So suddenly she feels lighter and brighter. That doesn't mean all problems are solved. Now, when she leaves, they're going to be waiting outside. So if she's not understood what you're sharing and talking about and closing down the chakras that I taught you before, then you'd have to tell her, put her through that, and tell her there's those spirits out there. And even if you don't believe me, let's do this physical, frown, swallow, breathe, pull your tummy muscles in, pull your privates in, and balance the spleen chakra. Okay, and then close down with your hands and feet. So understanding that, that's how to deal with the actual people who are still living who are negative. Any questions about that? If you do, put your hand up. Well, no. Okay, great. Thank you. Now, what are we looking at with the earthbounds that are people passed on? Well, it might be a hubby who really loved his wife and his boys and girls or whatever he's got, and he feels that he can't leave because he didn't have any insurance, she's got no money, he's worried about what the kids are going to do, and so he wants to stay around and see that she's benefiting in some way and try and help her, where of course as a spirit he can't do anything physical. So he will go to all the family members and visit, and they're all mourning and crying or doing whatever. And he is going, I'm here, you've got to listen to me. You've got to buy her some insurance. You've got to do this, and he's saying these kinds of things, but they can't hear him because they're not psychic, they're not aware. But it's not long before he's frustrated and angry. Now, once that anger starts gelling up in him, even though he knows he's a spirit, he has a choice to go into the light or the dark. His spirit guides will be there, and they'll be saying, you need to come with us. We'll take care of her. I don't know. I don't trust you. I don't know that you can do that. I haven't met you before. I've got to sort this out first. I can't come yet. And so going from one member of the family to the other, the anger builds and builds until eventually he, being now an earthbound spirit, because maybe months have gone by, he doesn't know time, because in the oneness there's no time, and bumps into, say, a drug addict who's also wandering around trying to find a new fix, and preying on the minds of people who are depressed and miserable, negative and so on. And so they start to get the idea, I need something, I'll go to the doctor and get some drugs. And given over amount of time that we have, the entity keeps pestering the mind of that person to take more and take more, until it's like, I want company over here with me, why don't you OD? Okay. Oh, I don't want to OD. Yes, you do. You've got nothing in your life. Everything's terrible. You've got no money. You've got this. You're buying drugs. Let's say it's hard drugs, and you're unconscious 99% of the time. So I can really talk to you. Look, I'm here, and I need you, and I love you, and I care about you, and I'm your spirit guide. Okay. Oh, I really need a spirit guide right now because I'm dying. Okay. And they will start trying to encourage them to move over. I found a lot of Japanese people, Rie, in Japan over the years who were on the edge of jumping in the canals and going in the, the forests to end their lives. And thank God I was able to help them not do that and clear the earthbounds around. So if you meet someone like that who's chronically depressed and you see they're deteriorating, how are you going to make sure there aren't any earthbounds around? Well, you are not going to make sure. That's the first thing I have to say, because you don't have the training. What you have to do is to ask your ascended master guides or archangels, whatever you know that you have. And if you've had no training, go to the top of the tree, God, okay, and say, please send your best, whoever you want to call them. Doesn't matter, you could call them dogs. God doesn't worry about the fact that people flip the word God over and make it dog. But, whatever you decide you want to be, ask them to send that light all the way down into the person that you're worried about. Now, on that level down, remember I was talking about descension. The highest spirit guides that are up at the top are going to incarnate in their mind into a lower form, which will be a lowered evolved spirit. And that one will then go down and piggyback on the lower one, and so on, until maybe by the time the highest master of all beings, let's put it that way, has gotten down to the earthbound level of negativity, all the energy has been shared and transmuted down through all the different people who've hosted their mediums to the different levels until it comes down into the person who is asking for help. Now, all it might be is that you just sit in a chair and do nothing. Don't think anything, don't feel anything, don't have the person in the room with you. They might be in another state. It doesn't matter where they are. You just sit there because you are the last in the line of that physicality they need to use to the person who's negative to physically connect with that person. So just think about it this way. Think of it, when we used to be children, we used to fold up paper and make a chain of men, little men or little women, all in a line, and then we color them and make them look different, right? I want you to think of that and realize that's how powerful the oneness is. Every one of those individuals is in charge of themselves, knows exactly what they're doing, right down to you sitting in a chair, and you know exactly what you're doing, sitting in a chair and nothing else. So don't try to do anything else. Is that clear? Never try to listen to the step above and the step above and the step above. You see what I'm saying? Because you're breaking the energy in the way it flows down and out to that person that you're trying to help. You want to say something? Oh, you're all buzzing and I don't know why. Okay, let me see. Kate is there, so she'll figure out what's going on.
He was having sound issues, so he just popped out and then popped back in again.
Okay, all right.
When you hear that little ding dong, it's just somebody coming in and out.
Yeah, that I know, but it happened more than once, so I got confused. All right, so going back to what I'm saying, have you all understood what I said? How energy from the oneness is transmuted down in every vibration till it comes to you. Okay, in the same way, when you start to develop your psychic skills and really do master it, you will rise up. You won't go all the way to the top because it's too much for you, but you will rise up and you will be able to talk to those who are guides, master teachers, and so on. Now, let's come back to the individual who's very negative that you're trying to save. And let's come back to the fact that they've got earthbounds in their aura. Okay, they will tell you that they've got a spirit guide looking after them, and you can ask little questions like, well, do you know how they feel? Do they make you feel happier? Have they told you anything? And if they are saying, well, no, but I know they're there, and so on, then you want to understand that you have to ask them, do you feel energy when they're around? And usually with questioning, they'll say, well, it's not easy. I'm a bit nervous. I can't really see them. I don't know if they're good or bad, but they keep telling me they're really good. All right. Well, that's the clue. If they don't feel at ease, if they don't feel like they're in heaven, that wonderful feeling, then it's definitely an earthbound spirit. So at that point, you will talk to them and say to them, you know, if it's in the God vibration, archangels down to a spirit guide, you will feel loved and safe, and all your worries will disappear. This entity is going over and over your issues, saying, I'll help you sort out it, but now drink some more wine, or now, you know, go take another pill. I'm going to sort it out. But they're not sorting anything out, and they're discussing all the things that you think have got wrong. So you can clearly see they're not angels, or they're not just spirit guides, because they're pretending, right? Now, let's say you're very open to feeling the entities that are around someone in an aura. If you do want to do that, never open up the heart chakra and lower. Only work with your throat, third eye, and crown. That's your higher self, okay? And so if you feel something is in the room that is really negative, you can talk to it and say, I know you're here and I know you're negative. You are not welcome here unless you tell me why you're here. Now, at that point, they may try and pretend to you they're spirit guides. Okay. And as I said, they'll go over your issues. They'll talk about things that is easy to read off your mind. For example, if you were worried about, say, a child in another state with this bug going around, then they can read that out of your mind because they're telepathic with you. Okay, so when you're thinking of bad thoughts, they're going to feed them back to you as though, I'm the spirit guide, I know all about your thoughts, and I'm telling you that we're going to sort your thoughts out. But you see, within a day or two, your thoughts have got worse and worse because they're adding subliminally their thoughts. So they're not helping you, they're making you worse. And over time, as I said, you see someone who gets more and more negative, and they start getting angry, which is more energy. And that energy, it's like that earthbound is behind going, thank you, thank you. That gives them more sucking in energy of the earthly world to see through your eyes and see the world, which is what they want. They want to be born again. They want to live again, but they can't. So they see through that person's eyes, ears, face, and so on. And yes, the whole body. And ultimately, when I worked in home and hospitals for incurables, I was 16, and I was walking into a very, very old building in England. And I can tell you, when I walked in that door, my spirit guide was always, breathe, clap, shut down, because when you walked in there was nothing but war casualties, women eaten up with rheumatoid arthritis with hands like this that they couldn't even open, men as well, of course, but I was female, so I was only dealing with females in those days. And I can tell you that sometimes I went into a room where there may be 4 patients, because they were all, putting rooms together at that time. That was unusual, by the way, because in Britain, they used to have 30 beds in a ward in a regular hospital. But because these were permanent people, they put them in 4 to 6 people in the room. And I would walk into that room and I would see these shifting shapes of earthbound spirits in there. And the first thing I would do, though nobody ever knew it, was I'd put my hands together like this, make sure my energy was strong. And then I just bring them up and say, may the love divine of all that is and God through my hands like this, because I didn't want anybody to see what I was saying. But I'd say it aloud, through the love of God and all things divine, I ask that all those present be ascended. And okay, so another thing I want you to understand is that when a medium is around and they're channeling the positive energy, and if the earthbounds are really sick and tired of following around after negative people and never getting anywhere, they get to a point where they do want to leave. And that's when they can leave, because there's no fighting. They would just go. All right. So any questions about that? Huh? You're making it really clear? You guys are good students. All right. So having got understanding how earthbound stay around by mentality in the beginning, whether it's to family, drugs, or alcohol, whatever it was, even a car accident, you know, where they're perfectly normal and fine and happy on earth, and then suddenly they're kind of, you know, in their mind, they're catapulted out of the car and they're standing on the sidewalk looking at something and going, someone's had an accident. They don't realize that they've had an accident. And then, hey, the spirit comes along, the spirit guide comes along and says, you know, but they just look like anybody else, you know. Oh, yes, it's been an accident. And would you like to come with me? Well, I need to go back to my car. Well, we'll find your car later, come with me. And at that point, no, that's my car over there. And then they start to realize, I was in that car. How did I get here? And because the spirit feels as solid to the spirit as out of body as it does when we're in the body. And so then it's like, I have to go home. I have to go and see. And the spirit guide will go with them. But if they keep insisting on staying around, the spirit guide has to step back. And even though they know there's earthbounds around, they can't interfere because of the laws. Remember the laws of karma. No one fragment shall invade the space of another at any time on any level. First law. So the spirit guide of that man who's had that accident has to stand back and watch him running around, let's say like a madman, okay, and attracting other earthbounds. Now, sometimes there's a weird thing, and I think I've shared this little story in my life with some of you, but I'll say it again. When my mother passed over, she was a very angry. She was always angry all through her life, and she had a lot of suffering because she had many surgeries on her feet and so on. But when she died, I was not able to go to the funeral because I was in Japan. And my father told me, go to Japan, your students need you more. So I did. And then after I'd done my tour in Japan, I then throat chakra. I'm still clearing my throat chakra, by the way. So then I flew to England after that with my husband in October. And they had her ashes on an altar in the Mary Magdalene, I think it was, not Mary Mother Jesus, because we're not Catholics, you know, on a side altar. And they got my mother, and they then said we had to light a candle. And when I lifted up that lit candle, you know, I wanted to say something like, I hope you'll be happy in the oneness, or something like that. And what I found myself saying is, now I'm free. Because I had been my mother's keeper, even though she'd reared me. From 7 years old, I'd been the one who had to be aware of what was wrong with her and fix her throughout my life. And so I used to wonder, I'm leading somewhere, be patient with me. I used to wonder all through those years why she was always saying very similar things to what her mother said. Now, her mother died when I was 10 years old, and I was with my grandma the night before she went into hospital, combing her very thin hair. And she had everything but the kitchen sink wrong with her as well. So she was saying, oh, the men, they're no good, and this and that, and they all let you down, and moaning and groaning about her whole life. So when my mom was passed over, they came to me, mum and grandma came to me in the shower unit. And in Japan, as Rie knows, you have the bathtub and you have the shower unit all in one unit. So I'm in the tub and I'm singing after doing a whole work day of work and clearing my throat. And all of a sudden, there is my mom and her mother sitting on a park bench in my vision in my shower unit. And I was singing, and I stopped singing because I was surprised. I didn't expect to see them. And mother said, don't stop, keep singing. So I sang a couple of, these were vaudeville songs, old songs, nothing you'd know. And after I got to a couple of songs, they just turned and smiled at me and walked through the glass and were gone. And I sat there in the shower thinking, what just went down? And then I realized my mother had had her mother in her aura all those years after my grandma died. She was an earthbound spirit, and my mother had come back when I was singing because, clearing my throat chakra again, my grandmother needed to be uplifted. So she brought her to hear me singing, because when I sang 3 years old on the dining table at New Year's and Christmas and events like that, that was what she remembered. Oh dear. Sorry, I have to clear it. And so I would say my mother at that time was about 28, and when my grandma died, and she died at 68. So there was 40 years of carrying her mother in her aura. And I never ever saw my grandmother in my mother's aura, whereas my sister would constantly do a reading for my mom and say, your mom is saying this and your mom's saying that. And it was all what my mother wanted to hear her mother saying, which was all the same SHIT that I'd been listening throughout my life, looking after them. So here was an actual good example of an earthbound possessing her own daughter. I got a cough, I'm sorry, hang on a minute. This is my history, so it's my button pushing. Because I'm working on the face, it affects my nose, my eyes. It's good that I'm doing this in front of you, because I want you to understand a lot of the coughing, your eyes watering and so on is going on right now. If you're aware and you're talking and speaking about your issues, you may start doing what I'm doing. Okay, but if you've got an earthbound about it, yeah, I'm sorry. I can't stop the coughing because it's the throat chakra working. Let me have a drink. That's way better. All right, so what happens is I get a tickle in the throat, and that makes my nose run, and then my eyes water, and then I'm coughing. So you can see how everything comes together in the head. And of course, back here, as I taught you before, you've got your deep subconscious, you've got your subconscious, and you've got your conscious mind. When you're dumping, your brain from back here is stimulating all this in here, which makes when you're talking and remembering out, it comes and you're going to dump it. And because this is a negative time, this is a good time for me to do that. And it might be a good time for you if you want to do it. Okay, because a lot of the planets are to do with where they are in my natal chart when I was born. Hang on. No, I don't have COVID. Okay, it'll go away in a minute. So now the next thing to understand is that if my mum had not rescued her mum, which was obviously her thing to do. My mum always had a good connection with God. So that was the end of the issue. And I have seen neither of them since, because I don't want to see either of them, because I want to know they're doing well on the ascension. Okay, but know this, that if you've had a family background and you've had people that have passed in the line of, like for example, Rie, your husband, and the history of mother and grandmother going back on that side, from the DNA and the RNA that we get from in the womb of mother and grandmother and so on, then you're going to see the same kind of habits coming out in your husband. Okay, now if they're passed on and they were in his aura, you would get a full-blown demonstration of the negativity that is in him, that was passed down from his mom, and even through the womb, through the DNA from dad. So it's both sides. But I'm just using the womb for now as an example, because the womb is a nurturing place where the spirit who comes in brings all their divine love and all the rest of it, and the mother, wherever she's at, has all her so-called positive versus negative scenarios mixed up with each baby. And so by the time the baby pops out, as I said before, you are encoded with both the negative and the positive. And of course, you spend the rest of your life trying to sort it all out as to which part you want to follow. And it's not till we get older and wiser and we don't have so many issues to worry about that we begin to say to ourselves, why am I carrying all this negativity? Where did I get it from? And then we start to realize, oh, I'm just like my mom or dad, you know. So coming back to Earthbound, if you've lost a mom or a dad or anyone like that, this is a good time to make sure your aura is clear and to make sure the oneness has taken them. And who's going to tell you? Your spirit guide. And when your spirit guide is really your spirit guide, they will make you feel ascended and lift negativity away. Whereas an Earthbound pretending to be a spirit guide will actually make you feel heavier. I'm going to give you another example. Years ago, and I have to admit, I didn't know what I know today. I was doing what was considered the way to do psychic development in those days, was sit in a circle and have a seance and bring in the spirit guides. And I had one man who was very mixed up and you know, negative about his life. And so I had to get rid of the earthbounds that were around his aura, but there was one that would not go. And he told me himself, not the earthbound, the man, that he felt like he wanted to commit suicide. And I really struggled like nobody's business to get rid of this earthbound, because I explained to him what he was saying to him. And it wasn't he, the man, that wanted to die. It was the spirit that was trying to tell him he wanted to die. And all the people who were also in the seance circle were students at different levels. So there was a couple there who were also trying to tell him that they could see the earthbound clairvoyantly in their mind and describing what it was like. And he's saying, yes, that's how I see him and all this and that. Well, for all the trying that we did with him for weeks in that circle, there came the day when he committed suicide. And I'm telling you that story because I want you to realize just how much an entity that is negative can invade your mind, get you to worry about everything you can possibly, you know, worry about. I mean, you could even be worrying about whether your ice cream is going to drip on your dress, you know, and make a big issue of it. See what I mean? It's so ridiculous. They will wear you down until you're generating so much negativity that they can suck it in. And then, of course, they'll use it up. So they want more, so they're going to wear you down some more and so on. So over time, you're just a flake. And you don't want any more to be on this planet because you're so tired, you're so exhausted, you've lost your energy, and maybe you started to develop an illness. Because once you don't have all the flowing energy in your body, you start getting digestive problems, you start getting lung problems, all to do with the chakras that are totally shredded. And that gets taught in the healing class about shredded chakras. Okay, so let's go into even more negative. Now, let's say this earthbound that's haunting, and I'm going to make it haunting you, has behind that entity many others that have been down haunting people for, say, 500 years. That's pretty young for some of them. And they don't know it's 500 years because to them, it was yesterday. Time in the oneness has no time. And let's say they're still, 500 years ago, let's say they're in the clothing of the 1500s, which would be the Renaissance period around that time. And they give you an image of them dressed in all this nine finery, and oh yeah, I've got a spirit guide from that period. But it's not. It's just that that was what they always wore. And I've actually had students in the early, I would say 25, 26 when I was teaching, early development. And what happened was 2 of the girls that were in my class came back and they were saying that one said she had an Indian guide and the other said that she had someone from the Renaissance period, because that was a big thing in England around that time. And I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, I can't see those. I don't see those at all. And next thing I know, they turn up, they're going shopping in the West End of London, and they're dressed. They bought dresses, like long dresses, and they got the leather belt on, and they were trying to look like that period. And I said, what's up? You going to a fancy dress party or something? And they said, no, we were just shopping around. We found this incredible shop with all these costumes and we decided to buy them. And that was a big clue to me at that moment, because as they were wearing, I looked at them with a new eye and I saw a beard on one woman, okay? Like Elizabethan beard kind of thing. And I immediately went spinning into even earlier than the Renaissance. And it was seeing Shakespeare in my mind, and of course I knew it wasn't Shakespeare, but I knew straight away that this particular woman had an entity that was that old, that was in her mind telling her that this was a spirit guide. Now, the interesting thing is the other one that gone along with her had a Roman thing. She hadn't bought a Roman thing. There wasn't obviously a Roman out, but she had put on another period piece like the girl to keep her company. And I'm looking at her and I suddenly see a Roman senator, which years later I found out was Cornelius Tacitus. But at that time I didn't know who he was, transfigured on her face. And I realized that he had put her into company with the other woman so she was channeling Cornelius without knowing it to help this woman get that dress, to wear that dress, to understand that what we were going to tell her was that she had a spirit guide. There was a spirit guide. And we spent quite a lot of time, and she joined in, was chatting away. And it was only after we got the first woman to understand and get rid of the earthbound that, because Cornelius was helping, and this woman was like going in and out and breathing and doing stuff, Reiki and stuff in those days. It wasn't called Reiki, laying of hands. And with me to get this entity out. And it was only after that I was able to say to her, the whole time you were doing that, you didn't have an earthbound, you had a Roman guide with you. And she said, oh, I felt that all the time. And I felt the joy and the pleasure. See, so there's a definite difference. And me being so young in those days, there was a drama right in front of me. So I could see the possessed woman and the woman who's channeling Cornelius. Okay. And I'm telling you that because you could be in that situation where you walk in that room and you just start seeing things and hearing things that you wouldn't normally see, but you feel behind you is the power of God and the oneness. You can't miss it. You know in your gut that you are with the right person. Whereas when it's an earthbound, you know in your gut, this feels wrong. And you must always listen to your gut about earthbounds. Now, I'm going back further in time. Let's say we go back 5,000 years to the Egyptian period. Everybody says, oh, I've got an Egyptian gut, right? And everybody thinks that's amazing. But, you know, people back in those days, they still had conflicts. They were still fighting the Pharisees and all these different things. And tribal consciousness was very much an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, which is written in the old Bible. It's only after Jesus turned it up, it was turn the other cheek. And by the way, that was misinterpreted because Jesus didn't say turn, he's saying show them a different face. That's the actual words that he was using. Show them a different face. You know, our left and right face sides don't look the same. One is thinner and one is fatter. If you cut yourself down the middle and you just flip this side over like that, you will look much thinner or fatter depending on your features. Okay, so those were interesting things we were discovering in the 70s about our visions of self and all these things I was going through, learning to understand when I'm seeing faces over the faces of other people, what am I actually looking at, you know? And sometimes I would see them literally flip that face over. So we can do that. We can show all of our bad side, or we can show all of our good side. So when you're looking at someone, even if you can't see it, you know, in terms of your third eye, you'll look at their face and you'll think, they're showing me the worst face out, even if they're quiet, because you see the negative across their face as a psychic. On the other side, they could be moaning and groaning about something, and you just look at them and you just see their faces so calm because the spirit guide is there. So you always know if you listen to your intuition, and by looking with your eyes, physical eyes, you'll always know what you pick up with clairvoyance to know if there's an earthbound with someone or whether there's a spirit guide with them, because they'll show by letting you see the good or the bad on their face. That makes sense? Any questions about that? God, you're so good students. All right, so let's go deeper. We are going to go into what we might call demons. Okay, so what are demons? Demons can be anything from little imps to, in your mind, great, I don't know, let's make them reptilian appearance and so horrid and all those kinds of things, nasty spiders and anything else you can think of that you don't like. Well, obviously, if a demon is really a demon, they haven't lived in embodiment as a human being. So the one thing that they're afraid of is actually having to ascend into a higher vibration, and ultimately, eventually, like everyone coming out of the first and second planes of evolution into the third, to begin to integrate and incarnate somewhere in time. Now, we're not talking just Earth. When we're talking about somewhere in time from the oneness, it could be any universe, any planet that you don't even know where it even exists. Okay, but in terms of gargoyles and all these things you see on churches, these were all put on churches supposedly to be seen as supporters to the Catholic Church, to drive away any of the demons. So these gargles and things were considered to be frighteners that would frighten a demon away. Well, of course, it's pretty silly, isn't it? But in those days, suspicion and, with religion and philosophy going right back into the Egyptian time was all about there is light and dark, and we never know which is coming at us. So we got to be on our guard. Now, I'm not going into whether the aliens did do experimentations on them. That's a whole nother thing. So don't go there for the minute. But what I do want you to understand is that most of the Egyptians were into the understanding of a rising ascension. That's why you see so many, pictures of drawings, temples and things where they're all going up. So they were very much taught that to end a life here and to go on up could be where? Could be going up to a satellite space station, could be going to another planet. We don't know. But whatever they were thinking, it was always about more growth, more technical growth, more absorption into whatever it is created of the time and to ascend with it. And at the same time, the oneness is bringing down into the levels of where they were at the time, new awakenings, new spiritual understanding. So the Egyptians were a catalyst, as it were, on this planet. But it doesn't mean it was just going on here, because when the oneness is realigning itself, let's say it that way, everywhere, wherever everywhere is going through it. But we are not sentient to all the universe, because we'd be crazy if we were. So we have to come back to here. So what we know about demons is that they never incarnated here on Earth, but came here via the battle between the dark and the light relative to the second and third levels of evolution at that time, where form was trying to find out how it wanted to be. So let's imagine you're just a spirit for a minute and you decide you want to look like a star. Okay, all you have to do is push and all your energy goes out in all directions and there you are, a twinkling star. Okay, but to your conscious mind, oh, I can't do that, I'm stuck in this body. Okay, in the same way, if you wanted to be a rabbit, you could incarnate as a rabbit, or so you could have some life. And so a lot of those things were going on with spirits who were experimenting. And we tend to put that back to the times of Lemuria, which is actually not young enough. We have to go back further, but people tend to think that during the time of Lemuria, most spirits were not bound by a body. They could flip from one thing to another, and that's where we get magic from, right? So I can pull a rabbit out of the hat, okay, and everyone goes, oh, wow, how do you do that? Well, maybe we'll say, well, you've got it tucked in your shirt or your sleeve, and it's only a baby rabbit, so it's easy to hide, and we rationalize all this. But back in the old times, a spirit wanted to explore form, and imagination was free. So going back to ancient ones who were really experimenting a lot, the more they came into form, the more they tried it, the more they liked it, the more they got stuck. Now, that doesn't mean they're stuck in flesh. It means they're stuck in the rotations of so many different forms. So that ultimately they're confused by themselves to know who they exactly are and what they're exactly wanting to do. And so a body of them, you might call them 100,000 or whatever, it doesn't matter, because we have no written knowledge or record of it here. And I'm only telling you what Spirit taught me, that the body of them decided to form an army. And the army was saying, we want to control more of the universe, the oneness, or whatever it is in our world. And so whatever was going on was a battle versus the dark and the light. And in that battle was friction. Before that, there was friction, but it was dissipated and often lost. But once they understood that the two were entwined, ascension began to really evolve. And with that, a lot of the entities who'd been coming into embodiment and exploring and creating over and over again different species and different things and building different worlds and doing whatever were getting stuck and lost here and left behind. And so they were left to their own devices. And this part was saying, that's fine, you do what you want down here, we'll do what we want up here. And the space came. And in that space, there was energy that was bobbing around and didn't really know what it was doing. So that drew them back together. And as they came back together, just like our forces in war here, they battled. And we learned to battle. And in the battling was the magic still, and that was used. And we think of that as like someone flying on a dragon or something, whatever you can imagine, you can say it was there. Because everything that we have in our DNA from the original species of us that was created has the dance between the dark and the light within us. And so you could correlate thinking about going into space and living on Mars. Probably you have, but certainly not in a time structure relative to Earth here. In the same way, you could relatively apply yourself to a fallen angel and feel they're a guide for you. And yet whatever they teach you is spiritual, is from the oneness, but it's all warped and twisted. Because over time, they've been warped and twisted by whatever is going on in the lower realms of the dark side, right? So they've lost their way. Now, here's my example of a succubus. Ria, this will interest you. I was down in Osaka and this really, really beautiful Japanese came in for a session. And she sat down and the first thing she said was, I'm evil. And I said, what on earth makes you think you're evil? And she said, well, everyone tells me I'm evil. When they sit with me in a room, they get cold, they feel miserable, depressed, and I'm sitting there feeling fine. And I don't know what the dickens is going on. She didn't use that word because she's Japanese. But so I said, well, I'm going to tell you who you are. And then I'm going to tell you, you have a succubus. Now, she didn't know what a succubus is, and I'm sure some of you don't, so I'll describe it. A succubus is an entity that is able to suck your energy and use your energy to their ability, according to the Catholic Church. But according to the oneness, a succubus is a fallen angel. And they took form to come down and lead the humans who were early humans in their spiritual growth, and got stuck here and married them, as you'll read in the Bible. Well, how big they were, how small they were, forget that, because if they're spirits, they can take any form they want. So mating was possible. But the way everyone talks about it, they were giants. And if you think about a giant, let's say someone 20 foot tall lifting a big stone, that would be a hard time to get that penis into a female. So it's not real. It's not right that they say that. But that's what aliens, people who believe, happened. But let's put that on the side. So these fallen angels decided that they needed to take on forms that were appropriate to the forms that were living. And so they took on the forms of birds and, flying reptiles and all those things that were about. And over time, they got used to that form and they stayed in that form, but they weren't alive on Earth. They were going in and out of bodies of those that were alive. You understanding me? You're following? Okay. So
yes,
I'm with this woman, and I'm looking, and I do a reading, and I tell her she's a very, very old soul, and she's harvesting this succubus, And Yumi is there, and Yumi is my interpreter, is like, oh, you know, and she can feel it because she's very sensitive and done all my classes. And she said, I have to leave after this. I can't handle this. It's too much. And I said, fine. And I'm left with the succubus. It took me 3 days to get him gone. And what I had to deal with was him and his hordes of minions. Well, what we call that is anyone from an imp to a slithering slug to a naughty gnome, you know, whatever his minions of followers were all egging him on to control me. And he put me in his vision in a cave in an acid bath. And he's telling me I have to get in the acid bath. Now, my overview ascended me knew that I was in my spirit body and that no acid would affect my spirit body. So I sat there, okay? Short version of this was, as he sat there egging me on to join him, I just kept saying, you are becoming. That's what I said all the time, repeated, you are becoming. And he's always a you know, and he's trying. And then all of a sudden I look down and I see that his claw-like hand and everything is splitting open and there's pink showing through. And I said, you are becoming, and pointed to it, and he saw it. And so did all his minions, okay? And so at that point, I'm trying to speed it up because it was too much to go through. At that point, when he finally realized I was the boss, he wasn't, all of this suit of armor, which was his gnarled crocodile appearance, was falling off him to reveal the angel. And at that point, he said, what am I going to do? And I said, well, you have a choice. You can take your minions with you, or you can push them back into the dark and you'll have to go back with them. He said, well, I'll lose face if I leave them. So I said, well, take them with you. Well, can they come? Yeah, of course they can, because they're all lost as well. Well, he decided he didn't want to lose face, so he took them with the oneness. Time went by, I forgot about him, and one day I'm doing a reading, and this golden dragon appears in my consciousness. And he said, I am. And I went, aha. He transformed, you see, from a gnarly looking dragon to a golden one. Of course, I can see him and he looks sort of Greek, and that's the way he chooses to dress, with white robes if I want to see him. But he still was turning up with me over the years while I was in Japan. I was often teaching and he was there learning. You see, he had been away from the oneness for so long that even though he's an angel, he had to be reprogrammed to be an angel. And so my job, having rescued him, was to allow him to follow all my lessons until he became the angel he was supposed to be. Now he's helping a lot of people. So we can save succubus. And he was, in man's understanding, a demon. But let's go deeper. Let's go to the kind of demon that is supposed to have magic and they throw things at you with fire.
Thank
and
you for saving a brother.
Okay. So the bottom line here is that when you've got a real demon, the only way you can trap the demon is in their own thoughts and their own way. So the more they throw whatever they're throwing at you, all you can do is send it back. Okay, and you can only send it back by understanding that you are in the dark, but you are of the light, and the dark and the light entwine in you, and you can use either in balance at the same time. Okay, so let's say, to make it pictorial so you can understand, see my hands, the entity is throwing at me fire and I've got water. So we got sizzling steam. Okay, we've got sizzling steam. he throws that at me, I have air. Do you see what I'm saying? The elements, the basic elements are always entwined. We live on this planet and we breathe oxygen, but there's 90% nitrogen. How come you're not poisoned? Because how come you're not frozen to death? Because the energy of the way it swirls in this world is in harmony, it's in balance. Okay, so in the same way, when you're working with demons, you've got to stay in balance. You've got to understand. However, I'm not saying go and start clearing the world of demons, because you haven't had all that training yet. And of course, when you do that, you've got spirit guides who are going to come down through the levels to be with you and work with you. I've been in some dark places throughout my years as a medium with spirit guides there. And I can tell you, there was the empathy with the environment of the slithering, horrible humans that are deformed or whatever in the lower planes. I should say the lower planes of the third world, the third plane. Sorry, I get it. Lower levels of the third plane, where energy is constantly swirling and trying to get into a physical form, but can't hold it, can't maintain it. But eventually it comes a time when they do surrender. And when they do, that's when we scoop them up like babies and take them into the oneness where they can be nurtured to understand the positive. Another story that I want to share was I had, this was my second marriage. And I was going through the breakup and I had 4 boisterous kids who were driving me crazy, blah, blah, blah. And I was negative, blah, blah, blah. And still didn't know what I know today, but knew a lot more than I did in the first episode I was talking about. And so anyway, I'm up in my bedroom and all of a sudden, I'm just lying there and all of a sudden this great big bear stands up in front of me on 4 like this. And I'm like, without thinking, I just scrunched up all the way up to my headboard and sitting there like this. And then something in me thought, why am I reacting like this? It's a spirit anyway. It can't hurt me. But that was my physical response. And I took a deep breath and I just let myself go down to a relaxed moment. And then this bear faded away. Okay. Story behind that, I had met a woman who was a chiropractor in England, and she had said she wanted to teach in my school in England. Well, unknown to me, she had a Native American guide whose familiar was a bear. A familiar is like witches have cats, doing it like that. And so she asked her Native American to come check me out and see if I was a genuine thing. And so her Native American guide came to me as a bear. Okay, so I want you to understand just from that example how I learned that spirit guides can, going back to the old time of the fallen angels and all of that, spirit guides can turn up looking like a panther or a mouse or whatever, to teach you a lesson about the fact that the spirit is not tied to a human form. All right. So I'm going to give you one more example of the spirit world of animals here. Okay, I had what we call an Alsatian in England, which is a smaller dog of, light colors, brown and black and sandy colored. And she was too much for us to handle. So I gave her to a policeman and she was alive there for many years. And I'm in my house one day, meditating in my bed and during my second marriage. And all of a sudden, there was Dinah bounding towards me, licking my face and so happy to see me. And I knew she passed over. And I want you to understand that that animal was only with me 2 years, and I had a newborn baby, and it was very hard to give her up, but I had to, but there was a bond between us. So I want you to understand that all your animals and creatures that you've had do not forget you. And I want you to also understand that some of those animals could be someone that incarnates in human form as well. An ascended master can incarnate as a dog if they want to. You could incarnate in your next life as a cat if you wanted to, but it would have to serve the oneness of a reason, of evolvement and ascension and friction or something going on. Okay. And here's another thing I want you to understand. Recently, before Steve died, there was a mouse sorry, not a mouse, a rabbit that was outside on my front thing, lying on its side. And my husband's yelling for me. He says, "You've got to kill it, you've got to kill it." And I turn it over, and the other side, all its insides are hanging out. And I said to him, "No, I can't kill it. You've got to kill it." Well, a short version of that was why he's rummaging around trying to find me a hammer to hit it over there. We're too, none of us want to kill this animal, but we want to put it out of its misery. And while I'm looking at this thing and he's looking for a hammer or whatever, I hear spirit, "Put your finger on its heart." And I did. And I sent energy into the heart to stop it. And he went like that, last throws, and then I watched its little smoky self come out of its body, because it's a spirit, just energy come out, and it looked like a little bit of smoky. Well, I've seen other people, come out of body and look like smoky, so I wasn't surprised. But guess what? That rabbit didn't go out of my mind, and I kept thinking, why is that rabbit just out there, or, halfway up? It couldn't have crawled up there. And if it was the coyotes that got it, why didn't they eat it? It didn't make sense that this little rabbit was there with its innards hanging out. You've done this and not eaten it or left it, which is what the wild animals will do. So I was musing on that, and I heard a voice in the back of my head. Well, I had to get to you somehow to tell you that your husband was going to die. Oh, what? Okay. And because my husband's still walking around with broken arm at that time. But I remembered after that, in refreshing that memory, that I'd gone in to take the hammer back, because I'd never used it. He'd come out with it. And my husband was by me. And as we walked through the garage, he said to me, "I had a dream last night that I was going to die."
I'm always going to cherish this, man. Oh, sorry, I forgot I'm not muted.
Yeah, muted. Okay. I had a dream that I was going to die, because he's made the association between the rabbit and him. And that was how I got the message. And I didn't even realize it till this time later. Okay. So I want you to understand that spirit do have the power to go into an animal that's been mutilated, pick it up, move it, put it somewhere else so that I can have that message. Makes sense. But to the rational mind, what? Why would spirit do that? But you see, he probably had been a rabbit in some past life, so it was no threat to him, and the animal had already been caught by something. So he gets in it, moves it, takes it, puts it in my driveway. And I know Lynn knows my driveway, and she knows how it looks, so she's able to visualize that. Okay, so these mixture of stories, I want you to understand that the more the angels are ascended, the more they can actually come back into the dark. So if I want to get rid of, say, a very evil entity, I've got all that on my back. I've got all those spirit guides who are going to be around me while I'm dealing with that negative earthbound. And so we're a body of energy that is overwhelming to them, and they don't have recall of the fact that they were angels once upon a time, because they're still collecting the millions of other species that were on this planet that no longer exist on this planet. So why do we talk about imps and the magic and all that all the time, because we're trying to remind ourselves that there have been other species on this planet long before we ever turned up, and that they incarnated according to the evolution of the oneness into different forms and shapes. So don't be afraid of them when they turn up on your doorstep, in your mind or in your heart. You got to be able to say, well, welcome, and what are you searching for, and what do you need? And they might say, well, I need your soul. And you say, really? Well, how about you give me your soul? We'll do a barter, we'll do an exchange. What, my soul? Why do you want my soul? Well, why not? And then you keep doing, you are becoming. When you're in my presence, you are becoming. They eventually think, she's got my soul. I can't leave. That's when the others come in and start saving them. So never think that you can be taken over by an earthbound entity that is thousands of millions of years old. If you have fear, that's the only correlation that they feed off. If you have fear and believe them that they can control you, you will become one of their million followers. We call them minions, M-I-N-N-I-O-N-S or something, but it's also millions of followers, okay? And when you see those followers, there are all sorts of things, all sorts of shapes and sizes. I tell you, when I saw Lord of the Rings and they had their battles in the dark and all those monstery looking things, I'm like, oh, they must have had the same visions I had when they created them, because they exist. If you can imagine it, if you can see it in your mind, they exist. Does that mean they have to come and haunt you and drive you crazy? No, because you're ascended compared with them. When they were in embodiment in those times, wherever they were, they only had little consciousness of existence and the magic of changing shape, right? But we're further along the field now. We don't need to change shape until we die. So we're fine. So believe in yourself and the power of yourself to say, no. That law says no one fragment shall invade my space at any time. I've only got to say that and cast you from it. And you can physically do that. And what will you do? You will spread energy all over the room. Try it now. I want you to try it. Put your cups down, anything you got. No, think before. We're going to build up a little bit of energy. Like, remember I said I'd give you things to do. So do that, like I told you that before. Can you feel your tinglies? Yeah, you feel tinglies? Okay, now take a deep breath. Hold it and now just attune to that. Do you feel different? Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay, you've just cleared your room. Anything that was in there, negative thoughts, negative ideas from someone else or yourself, or any entities that are there, that's how much power you have in your energy if you believe in it. Now, another thing to do if you think you've got an entity around you is to go into meditation. Now, I can't take you into that, but I can tell you what to do. When you lay down on your back, okay, you're vulnerable like an animal. Think of a dog, you know, you've got your upside down on their back, and their feet, whatever, 4 feet, paws, get the word out, is fiddling around. They want to turn over right away and protect themselves because the belly is vulnerable. Well, that's how we are humans too. We go around the world feeling the world with our front. I mean, imagine walking backwards every day of your life, feeling the world with your back. Be a bit slow, wouldn't it? But your back has the higher vibration. So if I cut you down the middle like this, the back part of you is your higher self. And that's why when you walk down the street and you feel creepy crawly up your back, like someone's following you, that doesn't mean it's a real human, it's probably a spirit. And they're probably an earthbound and you don't feel nice about it, Whereas if there's a spirit guide following you, you'll have a chill, but you'll feel empowered. Okay, so if a woman, for example, is walking down a dark street, and I actually did this in Japan, there's lots of little side streets, and I actually walked down a dark street. There was only one light all the way down, and it was at the far end. I don't know why all the lights were off, but it was late. And I felt that creepy, crawly sensation, like there's something following me, because I've been doing a class, late class, and gone on to do some work with someone else. And so I knew I had an entity with me. And so what did I do? I said, welcome to walk with me, but as you walk with me, we walk into the light. They followed me. And when I got to that light bulb, I just looked up at it, and I put my hands up a little bit, not so obvious, I'm exaggerating as you will see, but I put them up around what my shoulder is, because I didn't know if anyone was watching me. And I just said, here is the light. And I felt this shudder behind me, and the entity was gone. And then I felt the 3 monks that were there who were saying thank you, because I just rescued their entity that they've been protecting. So I want you to understand that even when they're negative, the guides are always somewhere around. They're waiting for that second law that each is responsible for what you create. So they were waiting for their person they're trying to save to see the light and say, I can go to the light, then they could help. See what I'm saying? So, so as a counselor and healer, you always want to encourage people to bathe in the light. So when you're going, if you feel you've got earthbounds around, you don't have to be in the dark. You can leave all the lights on. You lay down on your back. This is your front part, and this is the vulnerable part. This is the part you go around and feel everybody all day. So I've taught you how to close down, but let's say you feel you've got somebody in your aura. They're not supposed to be there. Okay, so you can actually lay there and say, get out of my aura, because I didn't invite you in, and do that whooshing that I just showed you, that passing away. But let's say you want to rescue them. Then as you lay there, you're going to feel like the earthbound feels. And what you're going to say to them is, you are becoming. I am the light, you are becoming. I am the light, you are becoming. And as you build up more, because you're saying I am the light, as you build up more and more light in your body, you're going to lie there feeling more and more relaxed. Your spirit guides will be somewhere in the room. And when that happens, the entity will be drawn into the light. How are we doing for time? I've been nearly up in time. I've got one more story I want to share with you. This was in England when Stephen was doing spectrum photography, capturing auras on film and Polaroid film, and was a pioneer in that field at the time. And we had a woman come to my British home, we were in England, and she was saying that Elvis Presley had died, and she is saying that Elvis Presley had come to her overnight and had sexual activity with her many times. Okay. And of course, I knew that it wasn't Elvis Presley. When I might add here that when like Princess Diana died, everybody all over the world felt her leaving, and the energy that she'd left in her presence, in teaching us that we are all humans and that we don't treat people badly. So the whole story is there, you don't need me to go over it. So in the same way, this woman who said that she had this wonderful time, she thought it was always wonderful, had called out to Elvis because she was an ardent fan of Elvis. So what had happened is Earthbound had taken on the shape and size of Elvis and come to her and touched her and did whatever. That's her private time. I didn't really invest it too much, so how deep it went, but she assured me it felt penetration. So you can understand this must have been a very deep physical thing that she'd opened up to let him in under the second law. which each will be responsible for what they do. So the entity is responsible for what he does to her, and she's responsible for what she's asking for. Okay. All right, so that was a rough summation. I'm not going into all her history and background and so on. You can understand that she is someone who's very sad and miserable and lonely. So having counseled her and done everything that Steve and I were doing for a couple of hours or more, we decided we needed the spirit guides to help us because she was so fixed on Elvis. So what happened was I went into trance, and a bunch of nuns turned up in my living room, and they were talking to her, this entity that's in her, that's been making sex with her, this woman. They were talking to the person. Turned out wasn't even a man. The person who was my client had a nun that was in her, and the nun had joined up to be a nun with the convent as a Catholic because she felt guilty because she was gay, and throughout her life in the nunnery, she masturbated every night. So when Elvis died, she took on that identity because she's a spirit, remember, she's not really a nun anymore, but she was being a nun, that was her last life. So these nuns who'd all been in embodiment with her now passed on because time had gone and she didn't know time. And they were trying to call her over with her name. And she, no, I'm a sinner. I can't come with you anymore. Look at me. I've been having sex with this woman. I can't come, and all this kind of thing. So she would not surrender the body of the woman who was looking for Elvis Presley. So out of this cluster of women, they went into a circle. They were all talking to one another. And out of this circle, where all their long robes, they had long robes, by the way, not short ones like today. The little dog came out of the midst of their feet and wandered up to the entity that we now got out of the body of the woman who was saying that she was fucking, excuse the language, but that's a word for it, Elvis Presley, was now asleep on my sofa. So we got this woman out, and she was standing in the room as a nun. Okay, Steve couldn't see any of this, but he was taking pictures, and I'll tell you, we've got a lot of energy on these pictures. I'm in trance, so I'm seeing everything. So this dog comes over, grabs the hem in its mouth of her, now dressed as a nun, drags her, and she's like, no, 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 but she doesn't want to harm the dog. So as it's dragging her towards the nuns, she's following the dog. And when she got right over at the dog, dragged her into the locale of these 6 nuns who just opened up their circle like this and took her in, and they all disappeared, right? And then the woman who was asleep on my sofa woke up and like, oh, I'm so sorry, what happened? I didn't mean to fall asleep, And then what followed after that was Steve showing her the photos of the shape of white shadow of a nun in the photo that he'd been taking. It actually come out. And she asked if she could keep that. And we didn't want to really part with it because Steve was doing research. So he said, I'll make you a copy. And I don't think he ever did, but that was how we got out of that. But I tell you, eventually, I don't think I've got that photo anymore. But there is an example. It was proof of the pudding for us that none of it was imagination, that there really was a rescue for that nun who had sexually turned herself into a male person as an entity to please the woman who wanted to spend the night with Elvis Presley and build a relationship. So that's how these things can happen with Earthbound Spirits. So I want you to be aware that what you ask for might not be what you think you're getting, okay? Because a spirit can transform and look like whatever they want to look. But if you see consistently the guide always turns up as the same person, then you know, question mark it. Now, I would tell you that Cornelius has past lives, and one of his past lives is Abraham. So that's how old he is. Okay, so when we talk about, Cornelius Tacitus, who lived 62 AD, he was born, I think. That's this, our era, back in being Abraham. I have to say his proper name, Abraham. Then he was a warrior before he ever became any spiritual chosen person from God that he knew of. Okay, so I want you to understand that when you think old and spirit guides, they may show you different periods of their lives. When you're in your own mind ascending, when you know all your psychic ability, they won't do that beforehand. They'll stay consistently with you in the body they show you, which is a body that you have probably been around them during that time in that life. So you're still their student. Make sense? Okay.
Yes.
So are you afraid of the dark anymore, or do you think you can work with it? You can open up your mics, I don't mind. Nobody, you're not, open up you. I can't open up you. You have to open up you, Lynn. You have to unmic yourselves. Ramona, unmic yourself. I want you to talk to me. Right? Okay, I want you to have, so we'll go one at a time. Okay, so Lynn, how do you think about elementals and earthbounds and ghosts and all those things now? Do you feel safer?
Yes.
And,
Yes.
yeah, and then not so, we hear so many stories all the time about how people's houses are haunted and things like that. But the real problem is they attract the haunting. Do you see that now?
Yes.
Okay. Because you were talking about someone that was thinking about their house haunted, so, and Kim was also telling me. All right, so thank you for your input. Okay, unmark yourself. Okay. So how do you feel now about these dark spirits and stuff like that?
Well, I don't feel anything like that, and I haven't seen any earthbound entities, but I'm not afraid of it.
Yeah, the reason I say that is because some of us don't get to experience it till we're much older. So you grow up looking at the physical world and all the issues, and that's what you've done. But you have to transition now into dealing with those who've passed on. So you will start seeing it.
I just remember that my family members, my mother, grandmother, I have two sisters, they used to see, they can see negative entities. And I was afraid of this when I was little. So I decided not to open my psychic, and I closed my when I was little. So I don't see them.
But you will now, because you're learning about it, you see. So what goes around comes around. So, and the fact that you're ready to learn, but you'll have a different point of view where your sisters are still nervous, you'll be strong about it. And with what I've told you, how you just keep saying you are becoming, you never get into the dialogue with an earthbound spirit. Okay, you let them be there and you just say you are becoming. If you stay with me, you are becoming. They don't know what, but they'll become light. Okay, so any other questions about anything?
No, I just wanted to state that,
Yeah,
when I,
Ted, we
just
can't
like-
see you.
Oh, here, let me go into this. There we go.
Okay.
Just wanted to say that, there was a time where I saw, well, my dog, like you mentioned, animals and everything like that, how they, kind of, it can be incarnated. Now, I remember when my dog was dying, she was pretty much like taking her last breath, and I told her just go ahead and go. And she took one last breath and then left. So that's why I know about dogs having like having souls and spirits and everything. Another thing too is I actually seen a lot of what you're talking about, the darkness. I saw a lot of like imps. I saw a lot of like different shaped things and stuff out there, and it freaked me out to the point to where it traumatized me at times. And so I kind of like shut myself off from that too a little bit, but at the same time, I've been open to it again lately.
Well, it's not about being open to it. It's about, your spirit guides will let them in when you're ready
Right.
to face it. And so you ask them always to be with you and protect you while you're in the dark. We all have to master it. And as I said, the bottom line is fear is your enemy when you're in the dark. Fear here on earth is good because you don't want to fall over the edge of a cliff, do you? So you've got to be sensible. And the same in relationships. You don't want to be hanging on someone who's so negative to save you in your life. You have to be sensible and fear them and leave, or they might take your life, So, fear is essential here, but in the oneness, you don't need fear. There, it's all you have to say is, okay, you're an entity from the dark. You can stay all you want. You are becoming, because if you stay, you get, it's like saying if you stay with someone who's negative all day long, you get negative. If you stay with someone all day long that's positive, you get positive. Well, on our scenario, if an Earthbound stays with you because you're positive, they're just going to get positive. And they're going to come to a point where they just want to leave. If they're too negative, they'll just leave because they're not getting anywhere with you. See what I'm saying?
Right. Yep.
Okay. So Ramona, what about you?
Well, it wasn't until I was in my 60s where I have actually seen something that I can't explain. I don't have a lot of fear. I have a lot of faith. So when I come across something, I rely on that faith, that protection that I have around me. But growing up, I've felt them, but never seen them. And I was never afraid of the dark. Like I said, I just didn't have, I felt something else was there protecting me. And my attitude was, if I can't see it, it can't see me. So go to sleep. And I would. But I've heard them. And I remember the elders saying, don't answer. If you hear somebody calling you from behind, a good spirit will always come to the front. This is in my culture. And so, if I hear it behind me, and I have heard, I used to hear it all the time, someone calling my name, and I just wouldn't answer. I learned a lot today about the reasons why they are and what is going on. I choose not to really want to see them, but I did have something talked through me at one time because I did automatic writing, which I didn't know that's what it was, but it was a message. So somehow I must be open to these things at certain times and other times closed off. And I'm good with that.
Well, you know what? I'm hearing you as I'm talking, and you do a lot of out-of-body work when you're asleep. So actually, you know way more than you're giving your conscious mind credit to receive. And now that you're hearing things from me, it's going to spark you to think more about the power of yourself and the way that you can help people around you through the church or whatever, but also, you know, in terms of yourself, your spirit, your powerful you know, and bring it forward in you. You see, entities will face us and they will exchange energy through the lower self, which is the front part. But what I didn't tell you also, if I cut you this way in half, down the middle, then the front part on the left side is male, female, because this is all the female side, right? And then on the other side, it's female, male. And then at the back, it's you know, I'm getting a bit complicated because I'm trying to rush it and let you all go. But the bottom line is, you know, if you see the back, this is all higher self, this is all lower self, this is all feminine and masculine energy as oneness back here. This is all feminine on your left, masculine on your right. So you're constantly mixing your genetic coding from your soul vibration and your DNA and your RNA as to who you really are. You're redefining yourselves all the time. You're becoming who you want to become. And of course, as we get older, we have more awareness of life and things that we're doing in life, and less people pressuring us to be what they want us to be, you know, because as you get older, people fall away and leave your life and get married, like the kids, my kids all in England, I'm here, you know, so we don't get to interact the way one does if you were just living up the street, you know. So each one of you has in your own way to understand that you are energy. And if you're emotionally into something on your left side, you're going to give a helping hand. If you're on your right side and you're into your masculine and that person's driving you crazy, you can push them away. Mm-hmm. So push, pull to and push away, pull to and push away. Now, if you use them together, you're giving that person a bit of feminine and masculine energy. I'm helping you, but I'm not carrying you. Mm-hmm. You know, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So if you think about it that way, but when you're working with your spirit guides, they will be behind you. They'll make your spine will chill. Okay, because they're cold. They don't have warm blood like we have. When they come, they let you feel that. Okay. And when you know they're there, because the back of your head, this is your higher self, remember, in your brain box, that is the deep subconscious. This is where your spirit is. So you will feel your head come up to the crown and you get tingling on your head. Then you know you've got the higher ascended masters. If it's an earthbound, it's all here. Because it's in your consciousness. There's a spirit around me. I don't know if it's a good one or a bad one. So it's all here because you don't know. But whereas when you're in the back, you know immediately, oh, this is spirit guide. Oh, this is an earthbound. And you need to trust that. That instinct tells you immediately. And what comes with it? Body. Your body reacts to it. Your body goes, cringe. There's an earthbound here. I want to close down to, oh, I feel light and bright. I've got a spirit guide with me. See the difference? Okay. Okay. Katie, have you got any questions?
No. No.
Okay.
No,
We run out of time. Yeah, we have, haven't we?
We're 10 to 7. But I'm just going to say, no, I have always seen spirits, entities, all that kind of stuff. It's never really bothered me one little bit. Nothing that's out of the completely consistently evil. Yeah, there's been entities that have annoyed me. There've been, but a lot of the spirits and entities that have been attracted to me are that are very, very young. Only because they are attracted to me because I'm a motherly figure and they're looking for a way to go home.
I have a question.
That's a good point, though. Let me just say, it's a good point that she said that a lot of the youngsters today, we need to bring that in, are born psychic. So by the time they're 2, they're whiz kids on computers or whatever, according to their coding. But they're also having entities attack them in their dreams and in their waking life through other people, other kids, whatever it is, you know. So it's hard for those psychic kids, and I was one of them. And I can tell you, I was bullied in school all the time. And I could see these angry faces, you know, on their faces. And I was doubly scared, because I'm scared of the boys that were doing it to me, and I was scared of the girls that were nasty girls that were doing it to me, and I was scared of whoever was around them. You know, could be a dead granny or something. I didn't know who they were at that age. I was 4 or 5 years old when I went to school, you know. So I was bullied a lot, and that's going on right now. Kids are coming home and telling their mums that, you know, they've been badly treated or abused or something by someone. I'm hearing it more and more in the news. Yeah.
As another pointer here, for those who don't know, I actually have a bilateral sensorineural hearing loss. In other words, I am moderately to severely deaf and have been since birth. Now, I rely on my sight rather than my hearing. So when it comes to entities or any spirits that are wanting to cross over, or just malevolent entities that are just annoying the crap out of me, I am looking for it. So I might see a flicker or something in the corner of my eye. I'm not necessarily looking for the usual traits, which is, oh, what was that? Do you hear footsteps? Do you hear a sound? I'm not looking for that, because it's completely different sensory. And so it's good to point out that people with different sensory or auditory senses, especially if you're blind, you're not going to be able to see something that's in front of you, but you might be able to hear it. But if you are deaf or hearing impaired like me, then you're going to rely on your sight to see everything.
That's a good
I have
point.
a question.
Yeah.
What I have noticed, and I want to ask you, is it possible to see entities that have taken over people? Because I have watched people change into something angry, or, I mean, it's like their whole, it's, they disappear and something else comes forward, and then it goes back. And, you know, I mean, I'm like, I don't know.
That's trance work, okay, is what I do as a medium. I don't do it so much these days because it's not relative to the world. But when I was 17, 18, I started channeling. I used to be in my bedrooms before I became a medium. I used to be in my bedroom, and I would sort of go into this sleepy state, and the next thing I know, I'd be talking. Well, the spirit guides were practicing with me, obviously. And I was seeing a tremendous amount of earthbounds, because England was full of them after the war and stuff and so on. So I had a mixture going on, but I never channeled earthbound entities. What would happen is, while I'm in that trance state, talking through me, spirit guides. So let me see if I can dramatize it. We are here to protect this child. If you want to know more about this world, then you must talk to us. You know, I just let that come. I asked them to tell me what to say. And I don't want to channel them all, but I'm so able to channel them. I don't go into trance. But in those days, going back, after I'd learned how to speak the words, I started to breathe deeper and go into a trance till eventually I became known as a trance medium in England, and people would come in a group to a shop. You know, there was no hallways or a church, you know, where I would go and sit on a chair and go into trance. And then the spirit guides would control me, and then they would bring the loved ones who are in the spirit world through me and talk to people in the congregation or audience, wherever I was. And of course, the spirit guides would be monitoring that and keeping me safe. So I didn't actually get to have Earthbound speak through me. But I always knew there was a part of me that was talking to the people, which is not me really, it's a spirit guide, because my voice would change, you know. And then there would be another part of me over here talking to the Earthbound saying, you can't stay here, in my voice. So it was like a double duality going on for many years, the way I was working in the public. You know, when I got to be in my 30s, because I'd had about 10 years of practice doing this, I was able to not even have to go into trance anymore, because I was downloading the words and I knew what to say, but people still wanted the trance work because it was entertaining to them to hear someone speaking through them in a voice that was different with accents and whatever. But there was one time, I have to be honest, it would be in the 80s, because I was in Thousand Oaks, California, 1983. We came back. And there was a local bookstore. So they were doing there what we'd been doing in England 10 years before. And I went to listen to a guy who, nameless, I'm not saying anything, who'd come from England, who said he was channeling the dolphins. Okay, dolphins, DOLPHIN. At that time, I went with an open mind. I sat there in the audience like everyone else, and he started with his whistling. I can't even whistle, but you know, like they make, and I just thought, oh, okay, but it didn't have the vibration of a dolphin to me, but I was still open-minded. And then he started to speak, and he was saying that the dolphin was speaking through him, and I'm looking at transfigured over him a Native American, you know, and I'm going, that's no dolphin. You know? And so I came out of there as what do you call it, a suspicious person, I suppose is the best way I could say. Well, time went by and I'd never physically been near a dolphin, and I ended up down in Mexico, where there were a lot of dolphins. They were still in the ocean, but they were cribbed off by, you know, things, so they couldn't escape their pens. And one of the dolphins literally was swimming, and it felt me, and I'm leaning over the side like this, and it swam up to where I was. My husband was there too. I said, don't do anything, just be quiet. And it swam away, and it came back a couple of times, and it finally came up, and it didn't speak. It just swam backwards and forwards where the thing was. But as it was swimming, I heard very clearly, free me, please, free me.
Oh.
And then a child went down into the same pen with her dad to pet it, and it just went straight over. And I'm still watching. This is the place where my husband had his first heart attack as well after that. But he wasn't in that mode at that time. And so we hung around and he was taking pictures, and I heard this young girl say to her dad, he wants to be free. Oh, yes, she got it too. And I just prayed that the pen would break or something, because what could I do? But I did talk to the Hispanic man there, and he said without them, they'd have no food. So here is another example, you see, where a species has intellect, but the spirit is what talked to me, not it didn't speak in squeaks and squeals. That's their physical form, but it spoke to me from a spiritual point of view. And so I realized this was a trapped spirit that could be in any form, not just a dolphin. And that was a big lesson for me to think, well, who is the real spirit? So I came home after my husband had his heart attack and one thing or another. Got home and I had more time to think about it. And I asked my spirit, who was that talked to me? He said it was a communal voice. And I thought about it. Yeah, there was 3 or 4 others in another pen and 2 were further over. I hadn't realized because I'd heard it as one voice. And he
Wow.
said they speak in unison. Taught me that. So we can learn from spirit guides about the animals, and we can learn how they communicate with us. So it's very important to just empty your mind and listen in your brain box, because it, you know, it wasn't in my ears, it was in my inner ear. Okay. Anybody else got a story or something they want to ask? All right. So I want to thank you once again for following me and being here. And this is the 4th week that I was doing for free. So my next major question is, are you willing to, sometime in October, you have a break, you know, now, because we're not ready for it, but are you willing to come on Zoom and pay something so we can pay someone for doing the website? It's not going in my pocket, but have you the ability to, I haven't even figured, but I'm thinking maybe 100, 150 for the course for you guys, which will go on indefinitely till you feel you've had enough. That would be special for you. How do you feel about that?